What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Modern Warfare. In today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the final SMG that came with the base game at least, and this is the Uzi. Starting it off, as always, let's have a look at the damage profile. With the Uzi, just like with all of the SMGs, we deal less damage to the limbs, but our torso damage profile is 34, 25, 20, 18, which means it's going to be a 3 to 6 shot kill, assuming you're hitting the enemy in the torso. As for headshots, we get a standard headshot multiplier of 1.6, which means our headshot damage profile is 55, 40, 32, 29, and this means headshots are often really helpful, and up close, just 2 headshots in a row will get a kill, which allows you to kill the enemy insanely fast. As for our rate of fire, this is the slowest in the SMG category at 612 rounds per minute, which is one of the big downsides with the Uzi. This isn't a very forgiving gun if you miss shots. Moving on to our minimum time to kill, assuming we hit those torso shots, in the 3-shot kill range it's 196 milliseconds, and then once you get out to the 6-shot kill range it drops all the way off to 490 milliseconds. So in that 3-shot kill range you do get a very solid time to kill. However, you can definitely see with every extra shot that you add due to the lower fire rate for an SMG, your time to kill increases pretty considerably. Also, it is worth noting that you can get a crazy fast time to kill potential of just 98 milliseconds if you can land 2 headshots in a row within the standard 3-shot kill range. Speaking of ranges, as you can see here, our 3-shot kill range extends out to about 15 meters or so, which is pretty solid for an SMG. That's actually not bad at all. Then our 4-shot kill range extends out to about 24 meters, and then after that our 5-shot kill range will extend out to around 37 meters. After that, it's going to be that 6-shot kill. Having a look at suppressor, the lightweight suppressor will reduce all of our range values by 25%, and the monolithic suppressor increases our range values by just 7.5%, which is hardly noticeable with this gun. When it comes to hardcore, our 1-shot kill range is right around 15 meters, just like our standard 3-shot kill range, and keep in mind, within this range you can hit them in the limbs or the chest, it doesn't matter, it still will be a 1-shot kill. So this is actually not a terrible gun in hardcore, as long as you play up close and personal with it. I should also mention in hardcore modes, if you hit headshots, you will get a 1-shot kill out to 37 meters. As for Hipfire, this is standard for the SMG category, nothing surprising here, and same thing goes with idle sway. As you can see, there's definitely some idle sway. It doesn't move around a lot, but it does move around fairly quickly, and this can absolutely impact your ability to hit that first shot at longer ranges. Having a look at recoil, as you can see here, the Uzi doesn't really kick very much, like it doesn't kick upward very high. However, it does kind of bounce around side to side a decent amount. And also, a big thing to pay attention to is the recoil between the first and second shot can sometimes jump quite a bit. This inconsistency in that first shot recoil can absolutely throw you off in some of those mid to somewhat longer range engagements, so it's something you do have to be aware of. But after that initial jump, it's generally pretty accurate. Like I said though, it does bounce around side to side a little, so if you're trying to maximize accuracy with this, I do recommend attachments that help with recoil stabilization rather than recoil control. Moving on to aim down sight time, this is one of the big upsides with the Uzi. It has the fastest aim down sight time out of any of the SMGs in the game at just 184 milliseconds. This is very, very fast. However, it's a little bit strange because the sprint out time is the slowest in the SMG category. Most SMGs will sprint out in about 133 milliseconds, whereas the Uzi takes 200 milliseconds for the standard sprint out time and 267 milliseconds for the super sprint out time. So kind of a strange dynamic there that you definitely have to pay attention to. As for magazine capacity, this is pretty much normal for an SMG at 32 rounds with 64 in reserve. And our reload add time is the best in the SMG category at 1.47 seconds, which is pretty solid. Now, if you did want to reload even faster, you could use the sleight of hand perk, which will cut that down to 1.02 seconds. This brings us into movement speed, and I was quite surprised to find that the Uzi has the fastest movement speed in the SMG category at 100%. This means it moves just as fast as the pistols do, and our aim down sight strafe speed is also the fastest in the SMG category at 67%, which is pretty solid. So that pretty much covers it for the base stats of the Uzi. However, we do have some unique attachments, and let's kick it off with the barrel attachments. The first one we have access to is the 13.1-inch first responder barrel, and with this one we get a 20% increase to our damage range, which is a nice little boost to our damage ranges. Also, this does help with our bullet velocity, which is going to help us hit our targets more effectively at longer ranges, especially when they're moving. And both of these upsides just come at the cost of aim down sight time, And with this, you just aim down sight 1 frame slower, or roughly 9% slower, at 200 milliseconds, which is still going to be tied for the fastest aiming down sight SMG in the game. So you can absolutely afford to lose a frame to your aim down sight time. I would say this is barely even a noticeable downside. As for the next barrel, this is the 8.5-inch factory mini barrel, and with this one, we get improved aim down sight time, so it'll be 1 frame faster at 167 milliseconds, which is completely unnecessary in my opinion. And on top of that, it makes us move faster. We get a roughly 2% faster movement speed, which means you can now move over 100% movement speed with this attachment on the Uzi. Now, these upsides do come at the cost of, first off, bullet velocity, so it's going to be a bit more difficult to hit your shots at longer ranges. And also, this does harm your recoil control a little bit, which, if we have a look at the comparison here, you can see that there's definitely more recoil while using this gun. If you're playing really up close and personal, you probably will barely even notice this, but if you are trying to pick people off at longer ranges, you'll probably notice this jump to your recoil. So finally for barrels, we have the 16.5-inch factory carbine barrel, and with this one we get a 25% increase to our damage range, which again, that's a nice boost to your damage ranges. This also helps with our bullet velocity and our recoil control, which if we have a look at the comparison here with the recoil, this really does cut down on our recoil a good amount, especially if you look at that recoil bounce between the first and second shot. It pretty much eliminates that, so it's not going to be an issue for you, which is quite helpful if you're trying to pick people off at slightly longer ranges. So this barrel has some great upsides, but let's have a look at the downsides. Our aim down sight time is once again just slowed down by 1 frame, which again, you can really afford to do that with this gun. It's not a problem at all to have a 200 millisecond aim down sight time. And on top of that, our overall movement speed is slowed down by about 1%, which again, the Uzi has such a fast movement speed already that you can absolutely afford to drop 1% from your movement speed. As a result, I highly recommend using the 16.5-inch barrel, especially if you're trying to challenge people at slightly longer ranges for an SMG. So that pretty much covers it for the unique barrel attachments, but we also have a couple extended mags you can use. First off, we have the 40-round extended mag, which says that it harms your aim down sight time, but as far as I can measure at 60 FPS, that's just not true at all. And on top of that, our movement speed is slowed down by just 1%, which, like I said, you can absolutely afford to drop that movement speed a little bit with the Uzi. The 50-round magazine is a pretty similar story. There's no measurable change to your aim down sight time at 60 FPS, and your movement speed is slowed down by 2% with this, so a little bit more than the 40-round mags, but it's really not that bad. And with that does cover it for the unique attachments with the Uzi. However, there is one other characteristic of the Uzi that I did want to mention in today's video, because there are a few misconceptions about this. I personally had this misconception as well before I did the testing. And this is due to the fact that the Uzi has an open bolt design. It feels like there is a slight delay from when you pull the trigger to when the gun actually goes off in game. And this would be a pretty big downside to using this gun. However, I did do a bunch of testing in a LAN environment to make sure everything was nice and controlled here. And it turns out this is just an audio delay. The moment you pull the trigger, this gun will be firing the shot just like any of the other guns in the game. And therefore, that slight delay in audio, while it might kind of screw with you a little bit, doesn't actually mean that your bullet is coming out slower, and therefore it's not something you have to be concerned with. So now that we have all of that out of the way, let's move into some great attachment combinations and example class setups. And first up, this one that I have for you guys is really designed to be a nice all-around sort of a gun, so it is designed to be a little bit accurate at range while still being pretty decent up close. With this, we've got that 16.5-inch factory carbine barrel. We've got the GI mini reflex sight on here, although you can use whatever optic you have that you're comfortable with. For our stock, we've got the Forge Tac Ultralight, which is going to help with our aim down sight stray speed because it's already pretty fast with the Uzi, but this makes it even faster, which is a really nice boost. For ammunition, we've got a 40-round extended mag on this, and our underbarrel attachment is the Commando foregrip to help with that recoil stabilization. This particular attachment combo is super accurate, super fast and snappy at aiming down sight as well, and fairly versatile as well. Taking that into an example class setup, this one's designed more for ground war modes, and with this we're using the M19 as our secondary, and the reason we're using this pistol is it's a 9mm and so is the Uzi, and this means they actually share a reserve ammo pool, so it essentially gives you extra starting ammo for your Uzi, which is great. Our perks are going to be EOD, kill chain, as well as shrapnel. And EOD is pretty obvious. Kill chain I'm using because you can go on decent streaks with this particular class setup. And then shrapnel is for ground war mode, so we can get those 2 thermites so we can deal with tanks a lot more effectively. As for our tactical, this is the stim shot. So like I said, this is a good all-around sort of a class setup. It doesn't really dominate in any particular area, but it's pretty good at everything aside from picking people off at really long ranges. As for our second attachment combination, this one's designed more for stealth play, and with this we're using the monolithic suppressor. Once again, we are using that Forged Tack Ultralight to help with our aim down sight stray speed. With this one, we've also got that stippled grip tape for the rear grip, and this is to help us a little bit with our sprint out time, because the Uzi, like I said earlier, has the slowest sprint out time in the SMG category, so I figured I could use a little bit of a hand in this area while trying to be stealthy and flanking the enemy. Once again, for our ammunition, we've got the 40 round extended mag on there, and also for our underbarrel, we've got the Commando foregrip to help a little bit with that recoil stabilization. This one is just a nice alternative to that first one if you are trying to be a bit more stealthy, and let's take that into an example class setup. With this, once again, we are using the M19 as our secondary for that extra reserve ammo. On top of that, we are once again using EOD. That's just kind of a crutch for me. I use that on basically every one of my classes. Also Ghost, so we can stay off the radar with our monolithic suppressor as well, and Tune Up so we can get our Dead Silence field upgrade more often, which allows us to be even more stealthy. As for lethal, this is a frag grenade, and the tactical is going to be a smoke grenade. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the Uzi. As for my personal thoughts on this gun, I do feel it is the worst SMG in Modern Warfare in its current state. That's not to say that it's a horrible and completely unusable gun by any means. You can absolutely still excel with it. When you look at the entire package though, it just doesn't really excel as much as the other SMGs do in the game, and that's why I consider it to be the worst. But of course, that's just my opinion. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the Uzi? Do you also agree with me and think it is currently the worst SMG that we have? Or do you think it's really underrated and it's actually pretty good? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, keeping in mind I have covered all of the SMGs and almost all of the assault rifles so far, I will leave a link to the playlist down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.